Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Back at it with a quick video. Just want to touch base with you guys about some really unusual squares that are going to be taking place over the next 2 days. Wanted to share a little bit of insight in terms of what this might bring up for you guys in the midst of this full moon in Gemini kind of fallout that's still lingering. That was an intense one. Hopefully you guys are doing very well. Do me a favor, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer with an emphasis in working both with tarot as well as the Sabian symbols. We do videos all throughout the week on like horoscopes, monthly horoscopes, astro weather every Sunday. We also have all of the new and the full moon videos. All kinds of stuff always coming out. So if you like my content, make sure you're subscribed, click the button below and leave me a comment. Let me know where you're tuning in from. We've seen so much growth. It really helps if you guys give us a thumbs up or a comment with the algorithm. And also sometimes I will chime in the comments. I do read everything, even though I don't always get back to you guys. I appreciate your comments and your support. Wow, so that full moon, huh? It was a doozy. As I'm filming this now going into it, but I've definitely felt it for the last day or two. So we're gonna be talking today about Venus in Sagittarius coming into a square with Jupiter in Pisces. So I'm going to talk to you guys what that might kind of feel like, why that's being amplified through the lunar transit. And this is really going to be shaping up pretty much from December 8th through the 10th. So you might start feeling this as of this morning when you're watching this video, even though it's not really going to be perfecting until closer to the evening going into the 9th tomorrow. But still, we leave a couple days on each side of the transit. Those of you guys who are Venus ruled, so if you're a Taurus or a Libra rising, or if you are a Sagittarius or a Pisces rising, you guys are going to definitely be feeling the squeeze here. Although Venus and Jupiter are two positive planets, these are benefics in astrology, and it's going to make things extra, extra sweet, potentially even extra emotional, very psychic, kind of tapped in as well. And the fact that it's happening at 29 degrees to me seems pretty significant. So I work with about a 2 or 3 degree orb, so it's already kind of setting up during the time of the full moon, but like I said, it won't be exact until closer to the 9th. Let me actually take it there now so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So I'm looking at Venus in Sag, so obviously we know Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign, so this deals with things that are changeable and active and expansive and creative in a way in terms of our philosophy and travel. Traditionally, Sagittarius has connections to Jupiter, and we see Jupiter that's in Pisces, so that's the traditional ruler of Pisces alongside Neptune. So we're just in the tail end of seeing both Venus in the late degrees of Sag before it moves into Capricorn, Jupiter in the late degrees of Pisces before it moves back into Aries. What we call this 29 degrees is an anaretic degree. So this is the last degree in astrology for each sign, right? So if we look at a natal chart, 360 degrees divided by 12, we have 12 houses. We have 0 to 29 degrees of each sign. So technically that's 30. And when we read the Sabian symbol, you guys will see I'll be reading it for 30 degrees of each of these two placements. But this is where there's like that tipping point. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my discussion today. I think what's most interesting, at least for me, is the fact that we've got the dispositor of Venus. So, you know, the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter traditionally. That is some aspects to each other beyond just the square. The fact that the dispositor is squaring it is what's making it extra sweet. And also that we're seeing that the exaltation of Venus is actually in Pisces. So it's like doubly sweet, right? They're both kind of speaking to one another very loudly about magnifying through Jupiter our feelings, our emotions. Remember, Jupiter is in a water sign. Our visions, our intuition, our hopes, our dreams for anything in regards to Venus. So relationships, our social kind of status, anything in regards to art or music or beauty. So there is like an excessiveness, a tendency to kind of lay it on very thick through these transits, potentially spend a little bit more, indulge a little bit more, and really prefer the finer things in life. So you might notice there's a little bit more of like a sweet tooth or some extravagance as a result of this transit. So I want to read to you guys first before I get into some of the breakdown about this. I want to read to you from Ren Butler. I have this book on my desk always. Really great in terms of just beautifully being able to kind of tie all of these archetypes between multiple planet combinations together. Love referencing this book. Those of you guys who don't have it as a part of your astrological collection, you should. It's super helpful for being able to kind of understand the relationships between the planets. There's both 2 and 3 planet combinations. So if you're looking at like stelliums or other transits, whether it's through transits or just aspects of the natal chart, very helpful. One of my books that I have on my Amazon book list. So if you're ever wondering like where my books are coming from, what I'm reading, you can click the links below. It'll take you to my Amazon storefront so you can see what I'm reading. For those of you guys who already have this, this is going to be page 120. And I just want to give you some food for thought throughout this book on what Ren has to say about Venus-Jupiter archetypes. So principles would be feelings of grand happiness and enjoyment, positive supportive relationships, a gorgeous and expansive beauty, impressive taste, style, the glory of love, tendencies towards rich living, indulgence, social ambition, snobbery, cloying sweetness, friendliness, gaudy, overblown aesthetic, habitual laziness, and passivity. We have to remember that Venus is about indulgence, right? So we can look at it from the side of Taurus, which is wanting to get comfortable, wanting to have security, wanting to have excess, but also wanting to really indulge in the senses. And from Venus's perspective, it's indulging in the good wine, the good music, the atmosphere, the relationships, right? The fine clothing. Character themes, expansive feelings of happiness, friendliness, harmony, accord, popularity, and likability. Generous urges to give and share, genuine concern for others, positive and supportive relationships, beneficial and helpful friendships, honored friends, the glory of love. Philosophical compatibility, shared values and relationships with a value of growth, philosophy, travel, a love of foreign culture, a talent for hosting social events, beneficial times for parties, gatherings, holiday atmosphere, urges to celebrate. It's better to live rich than to die rich. Qualities of charm, sophistication, glamour, flamboyance, expensive aesthetic, impressive taste, style, grand beauty, bursting out all over. Shadow qualities would be a love of shopping, luxury, extravagance, rich living, overindulgence, decadent materialism, consumption. Let's see. Alliances for material gain, gatherings with a theme of career advancement, beauty culture, beautiful people, the fashion scene. But also qualities of vanity, conceit, inflated sense of one's attractiveness and the need to find more cultured than other people, social and aesthetic pretensions, snobbery feelings, and yeah, just a tendency, I think, to be overly fixated on social statuses. That's definitely something that I see with Jupiter-Venus aspects when they're in a square. Habitual laziness, passivity, excessive love of ease, cravings for sweets as a substitute for love. So it's interesting, man. We're getting into the holiday season. This may be a couple day period where we're just really craving those holiday sweets. There's just more cookies and things that are kind of hanging around the house. Maybe there's more gift giving. There's more excessive shopping. But we'll kind of break down more like archetypally in terms of the signs, how this really relates. But keep in the back of your mind that Sagittarius is about travel. It's about education. It's about the bigger picture, where we're going. So there can be an overindulgence in spending more for first class tickets or spending more when it comes to courses and books and lessons and things of that nature, especially if you have more of an inclination to indulge in spiritual or self-help stuff, because Jupiter is in Pisces. So you might buy like a really expensive tarot deck. You might buy a collection of books. You might treat yourself to a new online series or something where you're going to be like learning something, especially if it's about publishing or travel or storytelling, or anything in regards to like meditation. I could see a lot of people who are like gifting themselves, you know, some kind of like retreat maybe, or learning like yoga. That's something else that I see very much connected to Neptune, or even Jupiter or Sagittarius. But when we look at this in terms of like nature, something that I like that he mentions is flowers in full bloom, juicy, ripe fruit, beauty and culture, glorification of art, spiritual and religious, things that are luxurious and ornate in terms of their decoration, very showy. But there's also this tendency for there to be things that are big. So music, big bands, harmonies, big concerts, anything that's just going to be like large and dynamic in a sense of the visual appeal. So it can also be lush and stylish cinematography, rich soundtracks, talent for good or grand music, themes of classic love and romance, happy times. So it's also great for like parties and things that are relating to being able to kind of share in culture and tradition, right? Keep in mind that Venus is on that tipping point. It's getting ready to move into Capricorn, so it's not quite as wild. Once it leaves that 29 degrees of Sagittarius, it becomes more refined, more serious, more committed, and it's not as extravagant or kind of party oriented. So I could definitely see that this is possibly like the weekend or the couple of days where there's just a little bit more wild and crazy, doing the parties and the socializing and the things with the friends prior to kind of buckling down a little bit more over the next couple of weeks. And we're going to see more kind of tradition and things that are going to be a little bit more reserved. Definitely something I notice also with Jupiter Venus aspects is just more of a connectedness to the goddess, right? Venus being associated with the goddess of love and romance and relationships and harmony and beauty, but even more so when you add in that kind of Jupiterian aspect. So archetypes in spirituality would be beautiful, lushly adorned goddesses such as Aphrodite or Ishtar, religious decorations and trappings. Dream images and themes would be people with these transits often dream of grand celebrations, happy social atmospheres. Characters have an outpouring of grace and love. There may be more of a need to dress up and have a splendid time, deluxe weddings, parties, balls, restaurants, charming vacation lodges, quaint villas, spas, and when joined by Mars, sometimes parades, but Mars isn't really making any aspects right now. The aesthetic for Jupiter-Venus dreams tend to be lush, colorful scenes of regal and voluptuous beauty, fine garments, lavish makeup. Dreamers may encounter multiple musical instruments and rich harmonies, chorus lines, and decorative dancers. Blooming fruit trees, charming figurines, and china. Other scenes include religious art and various saints. So just kind of some food for thought in terms of that stuff. I love the way that he kind of connects those archetypes and is really amazing at stringing all of that stuff together. For me, you know, my hot take on this, other than the potential for overly indulging, is I think that the mutable squares talk a lot about change and where we're realizing that there is this profound change that's kind of coming, right? Through Jupiter and Venus related things, what we're learning, what we're feeling, how we're expanding. But also what we're opening up to, because Venus is about opening up to something. So it almost to me feels like fireworks and some grand finale before we're kind of moving into something new that we might be kind of starting or initiating as Venus goes into a cardinal sign. But this is also about changing of our beliefs, stuff that's shifting in regards to our vision, and it's just very lively. So it definitely reminds me of that kind of climax point when a flower blooms and not many people realize that even though the bloom is so beautiful, it's right when something is getting ready to kind of die out. So it really reminds me of like flowers or fireworks. The 29 degrees obviously has a multitude of different layers to it as well. So referencing like that energetic degree, for me, looking at it at a degree standpoint, 29 is associated with Leo. So it's going to have this connection to the heart space and drama and children and creativity and taking chances. And 29 degrees is also extra psychic. So if you're somebody who natally has a lot of 29s in your chart, probably you're aware that depending on the house placement and the planetary connection, that 29 degrees represents a karmic tipping point, that it's something that is going to keep coming up for you in this lifetime, or it's something that really needs to be acknowledged and kind of worked through, you know, and it is the excess of that degree. 29 is connected to the third decan of the sign. So it does represent the more kind of outward worldly connection, the excess of that particular degree. So you might just notice there's just more drama going on, or that there is more excitement, that there is more joy or more emphasis on taking chances. But 29 is very sensitive, and like I said, it's psychic. There is some intuition kind of connections to it, especially with the squares relating to 29 degrees of Jupiter and Pisces. I think this can be really significant dreams and visions and intuitions and just like gut feelings and hunches that we might have about something. And then on the flip side, some astrologers see 29 associated with Saturn, and it's something karmic. And, you know, my opinion on karma, it's neither good nor bad. It's just neutral. Just it is what it is. So it may represent significant, you know, turning points that are taking place that have some kind of karmic connection, where we're creating karma, we're clearing karma, we're kind of paying our dues in some ways, depending on how this plays out for you. Now, specifically the 29 degrees, anything from exactly 29 degrees to 29 and 59 minutes is called the energetic degree. And many astrologers define this as the degree that's connected with fate. So I'm sure you guys have heard the term fateful events, right? I've talked to you guys about that when the moon conjuncts the nodes, or when it squares the nodes, or when planets square the nodes. There is a sense of fated events that are taking place. Well, the same thing happens when we see 29 degrees in transit. On the flip side, because, you know, everything it has its pros and cons, there's a lot of duality in astrology. Some people can see 29 degrees as being problematic, where it can be something where it represents some kind of turning point or peak. It's a critical degree that is a final degree right before something turns, and then you move to the next sign. So in itself, 29 is very mutable, right? It represents, oh, this is getting ready to change, here we go, and it's gone. So some of you guys might feel like the events that are taking place from the full moon in Gemini that took place yesterday through the next 48 hours are still kind of kicking up dust, and it's creating some significant things where it's like, and that had to end, or this is over, or I had to move on, or I had to cut this. And then the Venus-Jupiter square is a little bittersweet, where what did we learn from that? Venus in Sag wants us to learn. It wants us to talk about the overall theme of the relationship. So there can be this sense of reminiscing on sweeter times, or what we had, or what kind of has taken place in our lives, and what we're moving on from, or what we're graduating from. And I think that the lesson and the sweetness that Venus and Jupiter are bringing in with this is very much like, okay, don't cry because it's over, you know, be thankful that it happened, give thanks for whatever, you know, experience that you had, and try to kind of send it off with a little bit of love as you're moving into the next phase. So as we're going through what can be a very tumultuous time with this full moon conjunct Mars, this aspect can actually be very beneficial, and it can almost kind of ease whatever bandage we're kind of ripping off in our life right now. On the other hand, you know, this is going to be in a square to a fixed star. So there's a fixed star that's connected to 29 degrees of Pisces, and this is where it's a little hit or miss. So those of you guys who like to work with the traditional list of fixed stars, you guys know that around 29 degrees is the fixed star in Pisces called Shiat. Basically, it's a big red giant star. So I'm getting this information specifically from Astro King. It's one of the largest, brightest stars from visibly that we can see. It's connected to the constellation of Pegasus. And basically, it is a star that has some not so positive connotations. It's associated with the energy of Mars and Mercury, although some say it has connections to Jupiter and Mars as well. Some people believe that 29 degrees of Pisces has connections to suicide or drowning, murder, misfortune, anything in regards to also death or suffocation through water. So I'm not saying this is going to affect everybody this way, but I have noticed just an uptick whenever Jupiter has been at this degree of people going missing, or there being like suicides, or there being deaths, or issues with mental health, or just an uptick in people being in hospitals. Keep in mind, that's what Pisces rules, right? And Jupiter is in the same sign as Neptune. So there's no coincidence that we have heard that there's been an uptick in people getting sick, right? Neptune is viruses. There's been an uptick in people needing medication, and needing to see doctors, or having more anxiety, or having wilder dreams than usual. These are all Pisces type things. And Neptune is associated with the sea and storms and things that get lost or dissolve, or water, sickness, illness, addiction, mental health issues. So this is like an all-time high right now, because Venus actually has associations with health. Pisces is just more the treatment centers, or the places that we go where we actually receive some kind of care. So the fact that that Venus is in a more masculine, active sign, we're going to be hearing that there are more people who are seeking to learn more about their health, so that way they are avoiding some of these things. So you might be doing research into like, what are natural remedies for colds, or what can I be eating or drinking, or what can I be adding to my health regimen if I don't want to necessarily be taking medication for a cough or cold or flu. My advice would be, because Venus is in a fire sign, hot liquids, warm herbs, right? Literally, we've got a fire Venus square Jupiter in Pisces. So this is also about staying warm. When I say hot liquids, it could be bone broths. It could be that you're drinking tea with, honey and lemon and ginger and turmeric and cinnamon or clove. These can be things that can also really help, especially when it comes to being able to really assist inflammation in the body. Pisces has connections also to the feet. So I think of like ionic foot baths, or foot patches, or foot reflexology, foot massages, things involving the feet where we can purge and detox and pull things out of the feet as we're getting sick. So there's I'm sure a lot of resources out there. There's also a lot of people who come on my channel who are into natural and homeopathic treatments. So if you have any recommendations for people, feel free to leave them below. Just food for thought as we kind of move through some of these more difficult aspects. Now, Jupiter also has associations with anything in regards to travel, right? Expansion in travel, especially being in the air, as does Sagittarius. So I'm looking at this very complex square that's going to be taking place with the moon later today. It'll be in the evening. And this is when the moon in Gemini comes into the late degrees of Gemini, and it'll oppose Venus. So this makes us wanting more. We're reaching for more emotionally, wanting to connect more. We want sweetness. We want to communicate with the moon in Gemini, but sometimes we don't know how to do that. So we might have a more difficult time communicating and expressing our needs. Obviously, when the moon's in Gemini, there is much more of an emphasis on Mercury in the media and news. So there might be just more news that's kind of coming out about travel. We might also be hearing more news in relation to politics or the government, because Mercury, which rules Gemini, will have just moved into Capricorn. But the moon will come into the opposition with Venus, and it will enact this mutable T-square with Jupiter. So we're going to have 29, 29, 29, all at the same time. This is going to be tonight, okay? So today, tonight, into tomorrow, even tomorrow, the moon in Cancer, where it's at home, will oppose Mercury. Some really uncomfortable energy that's kind of setting up right now. And so you're going to feel that there is something dissipating, ending, and dissolving wherever Pisces is in your chart, that's prompting a change in your beliefs, or a change in your communication, perhaps even a change in your plans. And I think a lot of us are going to feel the full moon effects on the back end actually today and tonight, if you have not already gotten rocked in the last 48 hours with this really intense Moon-Mars connection. themes that we might hear more about are anything in regards to airplanes and travel, okay, extreme weather, hospitals, but also this theme of releasing or letting go, or things that have been hidden or stuff that has vanished is somehow now coming back up in conversation or in the news. And I have felt these energies, these mutable squares, is very rattling. It's been very much like, okay, well, you know, is this real? What can we trust? Is this fact? Is this fiction? Just relax, try to breathe into it while the moon is in Gemini, and know that, you know, tapping, breath work, anything in regards to taking a walk, really leaning into more of that Gemini energy is going to help calm the mind, and we won't be more prone to like going on a shopping spree or eating all the donuts, or, you know, having that like sugar attack, or having that freak out in a relationship, because Venus rules relationships as well. So a lot of us are kind of on edge, wondering, you know, what's going to happen. It feels like it's the grand finale of like a reality show, and then they leave everybody on a cliffhanger. That's what we can feel when we have planets at 29 degrees. Let's see. So let me read to you guys the Sabian symbols, and then I will kind of wrap up my lecture today. And I'm going to start first with the 29. It's 29, but really it's 30. So I'm going to be reading you guys 30 degrees because we round up. So I'm going to read you 30 degrees of Sagittarius, and see how that kind of connects to what's going on in the world right now. And then I'll read you guys 30 degrees of Pisces, which is the last degree of the zodiac. All right, so this is page 303 of my Sabian Symbols Screen of Prophecy book. Sagittarius 30 is the Pope. The theme is a call to higher service. The symbol speaks to attainment by the individual of a high position or societal or political merit based on personal excellence and an effective demonstration of high values and the ability to both fulfill the requirements of the job and the needs of the people who put them there. The image of the Pope symbolizes spiritual power and leadership, and alludes to the fact that any title or position of authority is meaningless if it doesn't provide the individual holding it with the opportunity to use his skills to perform genuine service. It also stresses the importance of positive feedback and encouragement in strengthening and sustaining the individual who is trying to accomplish his goal. At its highest, the symbol represents self-immolation and some exalted role of special service and willingness to sacrifice personal needs for a higher good. Watch for pretentious self-exhibition or an obsession with power. The accent is on hierarchy and spiritual leadership. Religion could make the news today, or you may hear about an important change in church or structure or doctrine. Your greatest advantage lies in living in your ideals and ignoring criticism and ridicule. Do what you believe is right. Guard against letting authority go to your head and getting carried away with power. Try not to confuse religious dogma with spiritual truth. Very interesting. Stepping stones would be holiness, sacredness, Catholicism, religion, righteousness, devotion, self-sacrifice. Man, I see more beliefs and spiritual beliefs or practice or sagely advice being Sagittarius. I see churches, the Catholic Church, organized religion, temples, societies, secret societies being the 12th house. And so I'm really wondering what kind of news organized religion is going to be making over the next couple of days, and what's kind of coming out very prominently, especially now that it's really catching my attention that it's not just going to be this uncomfortable mutable T-square between the moon and Jupiter and Venus, but the moon is going to inconjunct Pluto. So I'm wondering what kind of implications this might actually have on organized religion, as a result of like tax stuff, government involvement, you know, how the pressures of Pluto in Capricorn to control or dominate or bully are potentially putting on the news, especially in regards to religion. I mean, it's kind of hard to not acknowledge this topic right now. I mean, there's just been a lot in the news in terms of talking about differences of opinions on religious beliefs, and especially like history, and like not wanting to sweep things under the rug in terms of like what's actually happened historically, especially in regards to the Holocaust. And so I'm not surprised that this is one of the Sabian symbols that's coming up right now, because I feel like the squares from the moon to Neptune and the oppositions to Venus really much talks about the wildly kind of different takes on, you know, what religious beliefs should be and whether or not those who are in power are actually really what they show themselves or proclaim to be, right? So very changeable. And once again, it's everything's kind of like being sucked into a vacuum. And we're going to be hearing the same repetition over and over and over through the radio, through the news, because Gemini is everything that we hear through the media or social media, and everything's being distorted. So you can't believe everything that you're hearing right now. And you also can't take everything personally, because everybody is going to be full of some very, very extreme beliefs. And not everything is going to be grounded in reality, right? I'll just leave it at that. Let's read 29 of Pisces, but that's always a party, right? That's like the disco that's happening when everything's burning down, because 29 or 30 degrees of Pisces is the end of the wheel, right? That's when it's like everything kind of comes together and you get ready to release it and let it go. And then we move to the next phase, whether that's the next phase in our life or, you know, the next job, the next relationship, or reincarnation in general, because that is where the soul kind of goes through like that cosmic washing machine and processes everything and then comes back into the next incarnation, if you believe in that. Pisces 30, this is page 393. The Great Stone Face, the keyword is discernment. The theme is a tower of strength. The symbol speaks to the achievement of immortality through a consistent demonstration of responsibility that becomes a hallmark of personal distinction. It also speaks to self-transformation through the process of living in an ideal. The image of the Great Stone Face refers to Hawthorne's story of a young boy named Ernest who grew up in the shadow of a majestic rock formation that resembled the head of a man. Day after day and throughout the years, the boy naively projected his own benevolent nature and wisdom into the granite head. He shaped his own destiny by developing in himself what he saw and what was reflected in the beloved Great Stone Face. On a practical level, the symbol symbolizes stoicism, strength of character, reliability. It can also indicate the ability to mask emotions or resist emotional appeals. At its highest, it represents keen judgment, self-discipline, integrity, the ability to inspire others through monumental achievements. Watch for emotional coldness or the inability to express yourself efficiently. The accent is on integrity and character. You may find yourself admiring someone and wishing you could be more like them. Your greatest advantage lies in choosing your heroes and role models wisely. Have the courage to live in your ideals. Guard against compromising your values. Don't give in to pressure to relax your standards. Go along with something you feel is wrong or immoral in order to avoid an unpleasant confrontation. Stand up for what you believe in. Interesting that there is this combination between, you know, Venus and this 29 degrees, where it's basically saying like Venus in Sag isn't going to have a problem telling people what they love or how passionate they are about something or what they've learned, and wanting to share with the world, wanting to teach and inspire and educate other people. It's about people coming out with their true feelings, their true emotions. I think it's also about through passionate, heated conversations that we can find that we're not always aware of whose feelings we might hurt, right? Or where that may differ from somebody else's passions or involvement or connections or beliefs. Like there's a lot of stuff here that's going to be about people speaking what's on their heart, but not always being so considerate to who else is in the room, right? And so you're going to hear like the topic of, you know, whether or not stuff is politically correct or not. And definitely we're going to hear this reoccurring theme of whether or not, you know, we have freedom of speech and what it means to, you know, be able to share and express our beliefs or our values, and whether or not we have to tiptoe around things to be able to avoid hurting other people's feelings, or whether or not we have the right to even talk about things, and if it's just considered to be disrespectful or something that should you know, be censored. There's more of this. And I think that we're learning through contrast in the world right now, right? So we see how people out in the world who have a public platform are either using it for good to inspire and unify other people, or they're using it in a way to be able to create more hate and divide, and they're manipulating the tone and really the storyline to be able to kind of convince the masses that person should be kind of exiled child in society. So be careful when you're seeing this, because there is a need to have inclusivity as long as there is respect. That's what's really important. We don't want to necessarily be just shutting anyone or anything out. And we don't know with some of these squares. We don't know what the facts and the figures are. We're on the precipice of going into a Mercury retrograde, and it's going to be very interesting to see Mercury going retrograde in Capricorn, and then Mars going retrograde in Gemini, and they're going to make inconjuncts to each other, and we're going to start to kind of realize where things have been manipulated because it serves a certain agenda, because it potentially is giving certain companies or organizations or political figures more power, right? So there's still more that needs to be worked out. Try to ride the waves right now the best that you guys can. Lean more into using this opportunity for your vision and sweetness and a little bit of love, and setting something free to really kind of help inspire you to let go of old outdated things, so we can get more into a solid, kind of committed, grounded, more practical way of looking at money and resources and relationships, and also find a little bit more groundedness. Because as soon as we get out of these squares, actually, let's take it forward just a couple days so you guys can see what I'm talking about. As soon as we get out of these squares, Venus is going to move into Capricorn. The sun is going to move into Capricorn, and Jupiter moves into Aries. So it's kind of going to be mutable chaos until the better part of about the 22nd of December. Those of you guys who saw my horoscopes already, you know what I'm talking about. I talked about it in the monthlies as well. The first 2 weeks of this month seems very distorted and kind of manipulated and topsy-turvy, Mr. Toad's wild ride. So hang tight, try to feel inspired, try to stay open, and see what you can learn through this transit. Watch for the excess sweets, watch for the excess spending and globbing onto relationships or anything that is keeping us in our comfort zone. I was listening to somebody speaking recently about vulnerability and showing up, and whether you're in a relationship or you're in a very changeable kind of sensitive point in your life, and that when you're getting into either a conversation or a situation in your life where you're feeling uncomfortable, and you're really trying hard to kind of put your guard up and not be vulnerable, or not talk about how you're feeling, or not be transparent and upfront and honest with yourself or with somebody else, when you start feeling that discomfort, that's when you want to go further into it. So these squares for me kind of remind me of that conversation. That's like, no, that's the time when you actually kind of like hold tight and dig in your heels, and you commit to being there in the change and in the discomfort, knowing that the vulnerability is actually going to help you move through the process of change and come a little bit closer to the truth or your happiness, or get to like a breaking point in a relationship where you break through something and you actually level up and you get closer to that other person. Remember that Venus is what we love and what feels good and what we're opening to. And in Sagittarius, it wants us to actively participate in that. With Jupiter in Pisces, we have really, really, really extreme feelings. Our sensors are kind of feeling everything. There is a sense of us possibly even feeling fear or paranoia. So it might be really important, if you're starting to feel the mutable pressures today and tomorrow, and you start to kind of panic and go like, what if it doesn't work? Or what if they don't call me back? Or like, what if I don't get the job? Or like, what if I don't come up with the money? Or what if I don't, fix this thing? I want you to stop and take a breath and then just say, but what if it does work? What if it does pan out? What if I'm putting all of this attention and worry into something, and I want you to focus more on finding a way to either creatively or visually work with that energy. Create a vision board, sit down, make a list of the things that are going to go right, practice a mantra, go for a walk, do something that's going to help you move this energy around, and remind yourself that it may actually turn out to be a lot sweeter and a lot better than you ever anticipated, okay? Good luck. Let me know how you guys are feeling with this energy. I will be back soon. I will actually be back on Saturday. It looks like we are going to be doing live tarot readings. So if you guys want to get a reading in the midst of this wildness, I'm happy to read for you. There'll be donation-based tarot readings, 7:00 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Join me if you'd like to get a reading, and I will see all of you guys there. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.